Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Madara is Naruto's grandfather. He implanted his and Hashirama's cells into Naruto and trained him, which made him extremely strong. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment if you want to suggest fanfic. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let us begin. Chapter 35 Inches. Hello, Cage. Naruto greeted as he appeared within Gaara's office. Naruto. Gaara took a look at the person in front of his desk. It was definitely Naruto, but he was curious. He looked older and his hair had grown much longer. The younger look was all but a memory now. However, that was nothing. What was terrifying was the amount of power he was feeling from the blonde, the power that was far superior than anything he has ever felt from anyone. What happened to you? He could only ask that, even though he knew the blonde had come here for something. Evolution, Naruto responded calmly. I'm not here for small talk. I'd imagine so, Gaara stated, knowing that the blonde wasn't the one who visits people to see their health. Then, what can I do for you? You'll have to follow me. Gaara wasn't given much time to respond as he suddenly disappeared from his office. He appeared within the desert of the Wind Country, a bit far away from his village. I have come for the Biju that resides inside of you. Gaara fixed Naruto a stern look. That isn't an option. If I remember correctly, when a Biju is extracted, its Jinchuriki dies. I'm afraid I cannot die now, there is still much I have to do. Don't worry about dying. I will still return you to your office after I have completed the extraction. Naruto responded, walking a bit closer to the Jinchuriki. The sand around Gaara began to move swiftly, causing the blonde to come to a halt. What do you plan to do with Shukaku? It is nothing bad. Don't worry, Gaara, I only plan on ensuring that no one can ever become a Jinchuriki ever again. I don't plan on fighting you over this, so will you simply stand still as I remove your burden? Gaara was silent for a few moments. If he was anyone, he would have been thrilled at the prospect of having his burden removed from him. But, Shukaku is no longer a burden to me. I see, Naruto responded calmly. But it doesn't change anything. I will still take Shukaku from you. I thank you for sparing my life years ago, but I cannot allow that to happen. Gaara said. He was indeed thankful that his life had been spared years ago, but he wasn't going to allow this to happen if he could help it. It appears so, Naruto heaved a sigh. I guess I have no choice then. He went through hand seals, before slamming his hands on the ground. Kuchio's no Jutsu. Geto Mazo. In a monstrous puff of smoke, the demonic statue of the outer path appeared within the desert. Its mere presence was enough to force Gaara to take a step back. Its roar tore through the desert, in a terrifying sound that reached down to the core of his being. What made Gaara's heart beat a bit faster was the fact that despite the obvious power the statue was emitting, Naruto still felt stronger than it. He knew that this was one fight he couldn't win. He'd heard much about Naruto's strength, he had faced the blonde before, but that was long ago. He had grown up now, and it appears that Naruto has grown far better than him. Naruto didn't look like he was going to battle. No, he was standing behind his summon, arms folded across his chest. It was odd. He knew Naruto liked to fight, but he didn't appear to be looking forward to fighting him. Was he simply going to allow the summon to fight him? That isn't just a summon, you fool. Shukaku growled out within Gaara's head. What is it then? Gaara questioned, in a curious tone. You don't need to know, but you can't defeat that thing alone. If that thing is not enough, you have him. You have sensed that he is almost 3 times as powerful as he was when you faced him. What do you suggest then? Let me out. Before Gaara could respond, Naruto was right behind him, arms still folded across his chest. Fast, Gaara thought. But because this was basically his home ground, he was able to get his defenses up. However, Naruto didn't attack him, he merely spoke, resisting is futile. You're only delaying the inevitable, and each time a second passes, your village becomes aware of what is happening around here. They will come and may possibly end up killed. He disappeared after those words left his mouth. Gaara wasn't just going to give up like that, even though he knew that his chances were low. He was a cage, and wouldn't just back down without a fight. And so, he summoned his sand. The largest amount he could possibly, with the amount of chakra he had. But all proved futile as he couldn't break the statue. And when the statue moved against him, it attacked them in the form of chakra chains that proved powerful enough to pierce through his sand. He was forced to let Shukaku out, but it appeared that it was just what Naruto wanted, as the chains moved towards him with more speed and power than before and when they finally caught him. When Gaara was caught, he felt it happen. He felt Shukaku being ripped out of his body. It was painful, and draining his life energy in large bounds. He felt his life leaving him. He tried desperately to cling onto it, to keep the lights switched on, but it was proving to be much of a bigger task. The only thing that kept him awake for long enough were the screams and curses of Shukaku. The Biju was yelling about not going inside that thing. Its yells grew louder by the second, but they became silent after a few moments. Gaara felt depleted of his energy, he was barely keeping his conscious. Yes, he knew it, he was going to die. Naruto hadn't denied that he would die. But he had said he would take him back to Sunagakur. He just didn't know whether it would be dead or alive. He hoped for the latter. If it was the latter, then it would prove that Naruto wasn't as evil as other people were saying he was. Slowly his vision became blurry and he could no longer keep his eyes open. It didn't take long for him to drift off into the world of darkness. He was dead. A few minutes later Gaara looked at his hands, his face still had that blank mask he always carried. He was alive. He was alive. I am alive. He looked around him. Naruto was standing just away from him, arms still folded across his chest, but he wasn't looking at him, no, his eyes were staring at the glaring sun. Even though the sun blazed in full power within the desert, Naruto still stared directly at it. Perhaps they were having some sort of contest. There was no sign of that humanoid beast that Naruto had summoned. At that moment, Gaara realized something, he was no longer a Jinchuriki. Do not be so surprised that you are alive even though you know you were dead a few minutes ago. I did tell you that I would take you back to Suna. Naruto spoke, slowly turning his face towards Gaara. Gaara was lying down the ground as he inspected himself. He then stood up before replying. I wasn't sure if you would take me back to Suna alive. You've never shown to be merciful towards your enemies. Uchiha Naruto has no time for petty words. If he was going to kill you, he would have said so. Naruto paused for a moment. And you are mistaken, Kage, I am not your enemy. Konoha has banished you, only a few know this. Konoha had not revealed it to the public that Naruto was actually banished. They just revealed that he was no longer a shinobi of their village and that he was part of the imperial kingdom of the Rice Country, as it was now called. I had thought that you would hate all of Konoha's allies, especially I since I did nothing against your banishment. You considered me an ally because I once shared the same burden as you. The banishment means little to me. I don't need Konoha, Naruto responded passively. I understand that, but if it was me, I would have been furious at the act of betrayal. I don't understand their reasons and I don't intend to, but their actions are not just. Do not concern yourself with trivial matters, Kage, Naruto stated, waving his right hand in a dismissive manner. I told you, I have no need for Konoha and what I have always thought of the village hasn't changed. Gaara wasn't naive enough to believe that Naruto cared very much for Konoha, that even though they banished him, he wouldn't hate them. What was certain was that the blonde already hated Konoha for what it did to him. Tsunade herself had conceded that Naruto has 0% care for the villagers of Konoha. The only ones who were oblivious to it were the villagers themselves. This made him curious though. If they knew that Naruto cared not for the villagers, and still hated them for what they did to him, why did they keep him around? Did they believe that he would forgive them in time? Were they not afraid that this would be the last blow that would drive him to take action against them? Naruto has just admitted it, he has no need for Konoha. Could this be the reason he left without a fight? The logical thought you must have had of Konoha is that of hate. Moreover, you're not a very forgiving person. I imagine that your hatred towards those people is the thing that has not changed. That may be so, Naruto responded with a shrug of his shoulders. I have a question though, what do you plan to do against those people? You hate them for what they did to you. The logical conclusion would be making them pay, from someone like you. I will ask again, what do you intend to do about your hatred towards Konoha? If someone like Naruto decided on attacking Konoha, he would do much damage, so much that would leave the village in shambles. If he was planning on revenge, could it be the reason he was collecting the bijoues? No doubted it. But it wasn't impossible. You are a curious person, Cage. Naruto stated, calmly, and a little smile flickering through his face. So, if I said I wanted to destroy Konoha, would you stand in my way? The most surprising response came from Gaara. It was a rather bitter chuckle. The response made Naruto raise a curious eyebrow. Who knows? Despite my beliefs and everything, the decision I would take would be the one that is best for my village. Ho! Everyone thinks best for their village. The elders of Konoha banished me thinking of what was best for their village, and you would leave Konoha if it meant that your village might suffer because of Konoha's own actions. Naruto sounded a bit amused by the thought. Gaara shook his head. What Konoha did is different from what I would do. You were born in Konoha, and your father was their greatest hero. What they did to you is an insult to your father's legacy. I will not be abandoning them if I choose not to involve my village. I will be giving them a chance to correct their mistakes and face their own problem. You have a good mind. You will be of some use to the world after all. Perhaps keeping him alive was a good thing after all. In this world, there are those who refuse to shoulder their responsibilities. If you choose to attack Konoha, it wouldn't be because you are evil, it would be the results of their own actions. I believe if they are to learn humility, they must correct their mistakes on their own. If every time they dig themselves into a hole and someone is always there to dig them out, they will never learn and will continue to do as they have been. Sometimes it is better to allow a child to learn walking on her own. Konoha will never realize its mistakes. But I am a firm believer of the saying that revenge is not the answer. If you chose revenge, I would try my best to convince you otherwise. Gaara smiled a bit at his last words. This is an interesting conversation I wasn't expecting to have with you, Cage. Naruto spoke, turning away from Gaara. Let us return to your office. I wish not to cause panic over your village. You have done well in maintaining peace, I wish not to take it all away. This time, Gaara felt like there was something carrying him as he disappeared from the desert along with Naruto. They appeared inside his office. Aren't you going to sit down? No, I have to reach Kumo before the day ends, Naruto responded. Gaara had the decency to look troubled. After what took place in the desert, he was positive that he was going after Kumo's Jinchurikis. The Raikage will surely hunt you down for what you are about to do. I am prepared to face that. So tell me a good reason I should not make you my enemy, while he knew that sending hunter nins after Naruto would only result in their deaths. However, he couldn't allow him to do as he pleased because of that. A new world will come where there will no longer be Jinchurikis, and be happy, now you have the chance to finally live as a normal human. All the Jinchuriki I will face will get the chance you are given, Naruto responded, not really giving the effort to construct something persuasive. I don't believe this is all just to give Jinchurikis a second chance to live as normal humans. Gaara was positive that it wasn't all about that. There was certainly a reason behind all these, other than the one Naruto gave. I wish not to be your enemy. You will prove to be a good ally to Gurren. But if you insist, I won't convince you otherwise. Gaara shook his head. Naruto was being much more forward than normal. But the choice was given to him. And he understood the consequence of each choice. Why then, did you help me to fend off the Akatsuki when they attempted to capture me? You would be dead if I hadn't done that. Naruto gave a short, straightforward response. Gaara nodded, not doubting a single word. Tell me then, do you plan to use the bijoues for war? Naruto shook his head. No, I have no such plans. I can assure you that if any village plans to attack you because you no longer have the power of Shukaku, I will be there to crush any them. Can I take you word for it? Naruto merely gave Gaara a blank stare. Yes, then. Hit the training ground in these next days. If not, you will be a disappointment. I like to believe that your power is not dependent on Shukaku. Naruto disappeared after he spoke those words left his mouth. I wonder what surprise I will have to face during the Cage Summit. Although he wouldn't admit it to anyone, he felt light without having to worry about Shukaku. Could he finally be happy? Now he would no longer have to worry about giving his children the burden of containing Shukaku. Could he start planning for a family? Kumo, so this is where you hide, Naruto spoke, floating above Killer Bee and Yugito. They were at a remote island near Kumogakure. The island had no trees, there was just small pile of rumbles. A single glance around the place, and Naruto could tell that this place was used for training purposes. Both Yugito and Killer Bee were surprised by his sudden appearance. Despite his change in physical appearance, Yugito could never mistake his presence. And this time, it was even more oppressing than before. You recall me? Naruto then dropped down the ground, and looked straight at the Jinchurikis. Who is he? Killer Bee questioned, as though he'd never seen Naruto before. Uchiha Naruto, you fool. The former Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. He has become much more powerful than before, yo. That much is obvious, Yugito nodded in agreement. Both Bijuis within them agreed on that note. What do you want? I have come for Matabi, Naruto responded simply. You serious? Although Killer Bee knew the answer, he couldn't help but ask. He is serious, Yugito responded to Killer Bee's stupid question. She gritted her teeth. You saved me from Akatsuki just so you could take my Biju for yourself, it was not a question. By all means it looked that, and Naruto did deny it. It appears that way. Now will allow me to take Matabi without a fuss. That is not an option. I can't let you take her away from me. And I don't even know what you plan on doing with her. Added to that, she belongs to Kumogakure. You can't have her. No, she wasn't going to allow her Biju to be taken away. She would die, literally, if something like that happened. She had escaped death once and she wasn't looking forward to face it again. What makes you say that Matabi belongs to Kumogakure? You don't know the Biju's origin, you didn't give birth to her. When you were born, the Biju was alive, so what then gives you the right to say that the Biju inside you belongs to Kumogakure? Naruto questioned the woman who dared to think that the Biju she carried belonged to Kumogakure. We may not know the origins of the Biju, but, Naruto cut off Yugito before she could say anything else she didn't fully understand. But nothing. Your claim over the Biju is that you were the ones who captured it. If it works like that, then if I capture it should belong to me. You didn't create it, you found it roaming around the world and made it your weapon. Naruto paused for a moment. You are a Jinchuriki, don't say such nonsense. Bijuis do not belong to anyone. If someone can say that they are his creation, it is Hagoromo. What gives you the right you claim it then? Yugito challenged. She eyed Killer Bee wondering why he was no longer talking. She could really use his help about now. She didn't even know who Hagoromo was. But she got the feeling that the Biju inside her knew what Naruto was talking about. Because I'm a sage, and anything that is formed because of chakra cannot deny me. Naruto gave his response. Humans take Biju as beasts who need their guidance to survive or as just their weapons. But if another species was to come and hold you captive and tell you now that you belong to it, you would be cursing, calling them evil, abductors. You simply don't have the right to say something belongs to you if you didn't birth it. What do you think of Bijuis then, Mr. Sage? You are a former Jinchuriki yourself, and you housed a Biju that hated humans more than anything, it was Killer Bee who questioned. I do not think that they are weapons. However, I think of nothing of their current form. They are just pieces of something special. He wasn't going to tell them what, but the Bijuis would know what he was talking about. Pieces of something special. What do you mean by that? Samui questioned as she made her appearance. Flanking both her sides were Omoi and Karui. They were here for the training they did every now and then. Naruto didn't bother to look at those that had arrived, he had already known that they were coming. That is a story for another day. But you Jinchuriki understand it better than anyone than Bijuis are not just mindless beats. In fact they are anything than mindless. Killer Bee would know that more than anyone. This guy is ridiculously strong, Omoi whispered, looking straight at Naruto. The others had noticed as well, but didn't say anything about it. We know that. What does that have to do with what you want? Yugito questioned, staring straight into the eyes of Naruto. Nothing really, I just thought I should waste time talking, Naruto responded with a shrug. Now then, how are we going to do this? Will you allow me to get what I want quietly? Or do you wish to fight an already lost battle? We are going to have to be careful. This guy isn't your average shinobi, and he is unlike anything you have ever faced before. Fighting someone with the Rinnegan isn't a really good plan. But it can't be helped. Just make sure we don't lose, Yuki spoke to B, in a somewhat serious tone that caught B off guard. Samui, stay out of this, Yugito stated, knowing what the woman couldn't do much about the current situation. Samui didn't have to ask why. Getting involved in a battle with both Killer B and Yugito was something out of her league, especially if their opponent was him. Naruto sighed. Your choice is to fight, then. I really don't feel like it, so I won't amuse you much. My opponent is Uchiha Naruto, I can't go hold back on him. I will show him that I am not just an oversized monster. Yugito thought, transforming into her Biju form. Killer B did the same, having being already advised that he should not take things lightly by a serious Hachibi, he was certainly not going to fool around. I guess this can't be helped. But I will have to end things quickly, Naruto thought to himself. Bijudama. Killer B roared, having pulled a fast one. He could see that Naruto was still preoccupied with his thoughts. It was better to catch him off guard than allow him to prepare. The Bijudama was launched at Naruto, who merely stood still as the tailed beast bomb made its way towards him. It tore through the ground as it sped towards the blonde. When it flew close to him, he raised his right hand and the ball of energy stopped for a second. Using his own power, he deflected the Bijudama to another location, away from him. He didn't bother to look at the explosion that followed. I don't plan on fighting you, children, he stated. He was here for the two tails. He would get the Hachibi some other time, but not today. So Killer B had to go, for now. I have no interest in you, so you will have to excuse us. He stated, looking at the eight tails. Instantly at that moment, a large portal opened beneath it and swallowed it. What have you done to B? Yugito roared, rushing towards Naruto in her Biju form. She did not take long to reach the blonde. His reaction was raising his right hand again. But that did not stop Yugito from attempting to swat him away with one of her paws. To her own surprise, her attempt was a success. She hit the blonde and sent him rocketing into the rumbles of rocks. However, it did not take long for him to recover, and he looked just fine, like a giant paw had not smashed him into a rumble. That was unexpected, Naruto spoke. He hadn't been expecting to be hit, but it happened. He went through hand seals, before slamming both his hands on the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. Geto Mazo. Once the demonic statue of the outer path appeared, Team Samui was ready to enter the battle. But Naruto sent them to another dimension so that they didn't have to interfere with what he wanted to do. What the hell? Yugito roared again, seeing her friends disappear. If that wasn't bad enough, she had Naruto and his summons to deal with. Did you really think that transforming would give you a better chance of winning? I told you, the battle was already lost. You cannot defeat me, neither can Killer B. We'll see about that. Yugito charged at him again. Naruto sighed. How troublesome, he muttered as the Geto Mazo made its move towards the incoming Biju. It didn't waste time as the chakra chains came to life and the two tails was forcefully removed from Yugito. Naruto then sealed it within the Geto Mazo. I am sure I was dead. Yugito said to herself, holding out both her hands. She looked around, she was still the same place she had been when her Biju was extracted from her. She was certain she was dead a few minutes ago. How was she alive then? I told you, I wanted the Biju inside of you. I never said I wanted to kill you, Naruto spoke, floating a bit away from Yugito. The blonde woman turned to face him. There was no sign of the thing he had summoned, nor the Biju that was extracted from her. Where are my friends? If you have hurt them, I swear to you, I will kill you. Naruto wasn't amused. Do not make idle threats, he rebuffed her. But, your friends are alright. I had only come here for your Biju. I will return again for the Hachibi. Do you think Raikage-sama will allow you to do that? Moreover, Killer B is a lot stronger than I am. He will not go down easily, she believed it. She was also certain that I will be very angry about this. She made sure to tell Naruto that. The Raikage will be angry with you when he hears of this. When I was angry, things turned out to be nasty for whoever angered him. Why would he be angry? Naruto questioned. If he loves you, he will be happy that you are no longer a Jinchuriki. He should be happy that you can now get the chance to live a normal life. Don't you think that he should be happy that you can now have what you have been robbed? Yugito wanted to say he would be happy, but there was no way. I would be very much concerned about the power he has lost. The Raikage does respect power more than anything. Now she would no longer be of use to him than she had been. She will no longer be a guardian of Kumogakure. Only your friends will look at you as they have been, and nothing much will change with the villagers even though you are no longer a demon whore. They will say once a demon whore, always a demon whore, Naruto stated quietly. I will never look at you in the same way. Yugito couldn't think of anything to say but to blame Naruto for it. If that happens, it will be because of you. You have taken away the only thing that made me useful. Yet it is the same thing that made you miserable. It does not matter. It was all I had. I had accepted my burden. It was my burden, my curse. The last word was a whisper, but Naruto heard her. Forced into a weapon from a young age, no social life given whatsoever at that time. Loathed by the villagers as a demon whore, the very villagers you risk your life protecting. You became dependent to the very thing that cursed you, and now without it, you feel lost. This is sad. It certainly did look like he was sad about the matter, which of course was unlike him. What do you wish for me to do now? The only thing I am good at is fighting. I have given up on most things. Do you even know how much it will hurt me now that I will be hated without a good reason? Her voice was loud, barely holding herself together. Naruto merely shook his head. What have they done to you? Now you think being hated because you are a Jinchuriki is a good reason. You are certainly broken. Looking up at the sky, was the opening Yugito needed before she jumped onto him. However, Naruto caught her fist and allowed her to fall her to the ground as he was floating in air. I guess I must take responsibility for my actions. He stated. If you need power, you know where to find me. I will give you something that will make you useful. Isn't that you like being a useful tool, far better than living your own normal life? Was it really like that? Did she really like being a useful tool that she would sacrifice her own happiness? The lack of answers infuriated Yugito. Am I supposed to be grateful for the offer? Naruto merely fixed her a blank stare. I better return her friends before she starts crying. He held out his right hand. A large portal opened from above. The people he had sent away returned. However, what he was not expecting was a Bijudama to suddenly rush towards him. Despite this, he still dodged it and looked back at Yugito. Yugito, are you alright? Karui questioned worriedly, rushing over to the blonde woman. Yugito did not respond. Physically she was alright, but mentally, she was not. She is alright, physically, Naruto responded for Yugito before looking at Killer Bee, who seemed ready to attack him again. I suggest you transform back to your normal form. I have not come for you. However, if you insist, you will die. Just do as he says, B. Yugito yelled in a firm voice. If they sought to fight him, someone would surely end up dying. She did not want any of that. If they allowed him to retreat, they could regroup and work on a counter-attack then next time he comes for Killer Bee. You sure? Yugito nodded. Yes. I have already lost my Biju and in no state to fight. Our opponent is not just a normal shinobi. You cannot fight him and protect us all at the same time. Allowing him to leave is our best option. The thought she had lost her Biju made her bitter. It was even clear in her tone that she was by far pleased. I agree with Yugito, B. Hachibi stated within B's mind. Judging by his actions, I can say that he'd only come here for the two tails. And don't you find it odd that even though Yugito is no longer a Jinchuriki she is still alive? That is indeed curious. Perhaps Mr. Sage wishes us no harm and is only interested in the bijuis we carry. It appears that way. Hachibi nodded in agreement and spoke again. In any case, we should do what Yugito says. Though he did not doubt B's power, this was no ordinary opponent. He knew that when dealing with the Rinnegan, things were already not within their favor. And he was certain that the Ghetto Mazo was summoned here. Fighting with that thing around was a risk. Okay. Killer finally responded towards Yugito and walked over to her before looking at the blonde again. What do you hope to achieve by this? Naruto merely turned away from the group before speaking. I should leave before the others arrive. He was speaking to himself really. Were you serious about the offer? Yugito questioned, getting the feeling that the blonde was ready to leave. Yes, Naruto responded, still looking away from the group. A second later, he vanished into thin air. Yugito, what is this thing about the offer? You should not make deals with the devil. Karui was the one to say those words. I wouldn't call him the devil, Yugito said before shaking her head. Now she was defending him. Damn that bastard. Now she was confused because of him. You know what? Never mind. Let us just go home. Even the word home felt oddly strange to her. Was it really her home or was Kumo just her prison? Samui looked at the space Naruto had been at and shook her head. A week later the land of iron was as cold as it was rumored. May had never been into this place before, but she knew that cage summits were held here since this country always remained neutral to everything within the elemental nations. The samurai never involved themselves in shinobi wars. Instead, they chose to watch and allow shinobi to ruin their world. Perhaps only Onoki had been into a cage summit before, but she was certain those other cages had never been to one. The cages tended not to agree to come to these meetings unless the situation was serious and it would be for their benefit if they came. She could say that coming here would benefit Kurigake or anything, but she came anyway. It was for the best of the shinobi world. She would do anything within her limits to ensure that this place was a peaceful place for everyone. Mizukage Dono, the voice of the young Kazekage snapped her out of her thoughts. The young male was with his siblings, as always. Kazekage Dono, it is so lovely to see you, May responded, ever so smiling warmly. How are you? Of course she had heard what had happened to him, Naruto had told her all about it. She was a bit mad that he refused to tell her what he wanted to do with the bijoues. I am well, you. Gaara never lost his usual expression despite the warm smile that the older woman was giving him. I am good. I'm told by the guards that the other cages have already arrived. We are the last ones to come here, shall we head out to meet the others? Gaara nodded, and joined May and her company as they made their way towards their destination. They were not here to rest but to get this summit started and see where everyone else was standing. Upper room, so you have finally decided to show up. Onoki greeted the two cages as they appeared within the meeting room. He had been waiting for them to show up. It wasn't good for the young ones to keep the elders waiting. They should have been the ones to arrive first. He didn't even acknowledge Gaara as a cage, yet. Yes, we have. May decided to amuse the Tsuchikage in a rather smooth tone that earned her a glare from the short man. Even though she has less experience than him, she wasn't simply going to allow him to walk over her. Naruto would be disappointed if she did that. As far as my time tells me, we are not late for the meeting. Perhaps you are being like that because you have far more pressing matters to deal with than us, Gaara also responded as he took a seat. Of course Tsunade was surprised that he could say something like that. If anything, she had expected the red-haired to keep quiet. Cocky brat, Onoki retorted. I don't know what you mean by, you have far more pressing matters to deal with than use, but need I remind you that you have also lost your biju? Gaara shook his head calmly. There is no need for that. I'm aware that Shukaku was taken by Naruto. I had a good chat with him after he took it away. What I meant was that, losing Shukaku isn't a crisis to me and my village. If anything, people seem to be a little lively since Shukaku was no longer with them. Onoki narrowed his eyes at the cage. Did you simply give your biju away? Could it be that you are working with him? If you are, it would explain why you have not sent hunter nins after him. There is no need to throw suspicions at me Tsuchikage Dono. I'm not working with Naruto. I did not send my hunter nins to their deaths because I know that he doesn't want to use bijus as weapons. If we start suspecting everyone, we can even suspect that Konoha is behind it. Anyone would find it curious because Madara came back to life, and Naruto leaves Konoha. After that, he starts collecting bijus. One can assume that this is all Konoha's ploy. Gaara paused for a moment, bowing his head slightly at Tsunade. I meant not to throw suspicions at you, Hokage Dono. I was just trying to prove a point. Tsunade shrugged, understanding him. Behind her were Sasuke and Kakashi. I understand, she said, knowing that Gaara was indeed just trying to prove a point. She didn't think that there was a hidden agenda behind his words. You may all be working with him, Onoki again added the fuel, speaking in a careless tone. Enough of this, I exclaimed, hitting the table with his right fist. His guards, B and Darui didn't seem to be too surprised by this action. Tsunade's sweat dropped, remembering the similarities between her and the Raikage. If it was her room, she would have been the one doing what the Raikage did. Add more to that, she would have certainly broken the table. I agree with the Raikage, Mifune spoke calmly. As chair of this meeting, I move to start this summit. And please cages, speak after one has finished speaking. I will not tolerate violence in this place. Tsunade cleared her throat to speak. I had called this meeting to discuss the current situation within the elemental nations. The issues that I wanted us to discuss were Madara, Naruto and Imperial Kingdom of Rice. What bothered me the most was the Tsuchikage attack on the capital of Rice. Regardless of how powerful the country is becoming, attacking it was just provoking violence. I have to agree with Hokage Dono on this one, Mei stated, after Tsunade had spoken. Your attack on the capital of Rice only makes you look power-hungry. And the attack was on Naruto. If anything, he had not done anything against your country to warrant that attack. If he had chosen to take your attempt for an assault as a sign of war, you would have been asking for our help now because he would be coming after you. And I doubt anyone would have helped you out since you started it, Tsunade added, keeping herself composed. Onoki merely snorted in response before fixing Mei a look. You are only defending him because you are sleeping with him. But that is to be expected, everyone protects their interest after all. That was uncalled for, Tsuchikage. My personal relationship with Naruto has nothing to do with my views. Mei stated, not trying so hard to defend herself. Sasuke shook his head slightly. This wasn't what he expected of a cage meeting. Wild accusations were being thrown around the room and it wasn't getting them anywhere. He entertained the thought that if Naruto had been here, he would have surely done something. Yes, when Naruto was present, things got done in time. The blonde didn't have time to throw about meaningless words. If he'd been here, things would have taken another twist, but things got done. At least that was something good about Naruto. While it appeared that something suspicious was going on between Naruto and Gaara, he wouldn't think that Gaara was someone who would side with Naruto if he knew he was planning something bad. That reason ruled out the cage for making a deal with Naruto, and another questionable thing was that Gaara should have died if his Biju was taken away from him, but he was alive and well. According to Tsunade, the cage wasn't telling what had happened. Thinking hard, Sasuke could assume that Gaara may have been brought back from the dead. Naruto had died before and then came back to life. If he was able to make himself come back from the dead, what was standing in his way from bringing others to life? This kind of meaningless talk was starting to get on Ai's nerves. The bigger problem was that Naruto was hunting down Bijuus and they had to deal with that problem before he started doing anything evil. An attack on one of his shinobi was a personal attack on him. He wasn't going to allow Naruto to get away with it. You are all forgetting the bigger picture here. It now no longer matters if Onoki provoked a war with Naruto. Naruto has become a threat too great that we cannot allow him to roam free about this world. If he is not enough, we also have Madara to deal with. Have you all forgotten that Naruto has been successfully hunting down Bijuus? The Raikage spoke in a loud, firm tone. Finally, someone with some brains, Onoki mumbled silently. I would advise that you refrain from making such comments, Tsuchikage. I understand that you are older than your fellow cages, but that doesn't give you the right to make such disrespectful comments, Mifune stated in a stern tone. As the neutral party in all these, he was going to try his best to ensure that these talks were peaceful. Onoki merely shrugged in response. Perhaps this isn't of concern to you because you have all lost your Bijuus. However, this is a serious matter that has to be dealt with. If anything, Naruto should be branded an international criminal. He is wanted for his crimes in my country and the Tsuchikage's village. I was looking directly at Tsunade. What are you expecting from me? Tsunade questioned in serious tone and composed expression on her face. He was your shinobi. Hand on over everything you know about him as well as Madara. Should you refuse, we will think otherwise. The Raikage was firm in his tone. It was obvious that he wasn't going to take no for an answer. Tsunade eyed her guards, Kakashi and Sasuke for a moment before she sighed. I'll hand over everything you want. However, I'm afraid I'll not offer any help in dealing with Naruto unless we confirm that he is planning something that is not good or attacks Konoha directly. Nevertheless, I'll offer my help in dealing with Madara, as I guess we all agree that he is a threat that we cannot allow to live. I'll also send my help in dealing with Madara. However, like the Hokage, I will refrain from igniting war with Naruto, Gaara stated. He had confidence in his belief that Naruto wasn't going to suddenly come to his village and demand what he wanted. He would only fight if it came to that. But for now, he would take Naruto's word. The same can be said for me, Mei stated, calmly. She was not going to start a manhunt for Naruto. He was her fiancé after all. Are you that afraid of his power that you will simply turn a blind eye even when he attacked you? Onoki questioned, looking straight Gaara. Not at all, Gaara responded. I have my reasons and you cannot possibly understand them. Tsuchikage and I will talk about Naruto. Since we all seem to agree that Madara is also a threat, how do you propose we deal with him? I said, his eyes darting around the room to see who would come with the first suggestion. Combining our top shinobi to deal with him would be our best option. Mei suggested in a thoughtful tone. Gaara nodded in agreement with her, as well as Tsunade. Tsunade added to what had been said. Naruto has proven that an Amri is not an obstacle. Then if Madara is like Naruto, sending an army after him would only result in countless deaths. Before anything could be said, the devil himself burst into the room through the roof. He settled beside a wall facing everyone. Why don't I make it easy for you? Deal with me now. This saves you the trouble of hunting me and you cages are the strongest of your villages, who better to deal with me than you? The reaction from everyone was instantaneous. The seated cages stood up and prepared themselves for battle, while their respective guards got hold of their weapons. Uchiha Madara, it is really you, Onoki stated, glaring down at the infamous Uchiha. The sight of the man infuriated him. It made him relive the embarrassment of long ago, making his blood boil to dangerous degeries. This will be fun. I hope you've improved, Onoki, Madara stated, standing a bit away from the cages. He was standing next to the wall, with the window. Let us wait for Naruto to appear. He stated, ever so calmly, folding his hands across his chest. On cue, Naruto appeared next to his grandfather. However, as soon as he appeared, the Raikage was in front of him in lightning speeds. On reflex, Naruto brought the gunbai he was carrying for Madara. The Raikage's lightning punch hit the gunbai, and never reached the blonde. Seeing his surprise attack blocked, I retreated. I forgot to hand this over to you, Naruto stated, handing Madara his gunbai. The legendary Uchiha took it without a word. However, he noticed Naruto's change and increase in power. Sasuke and Kakashi narrowed their eyes at this view. Naruto's new appearance was something, and those two looked more alike. The gunbai that Naruto gave to Madara was the same that he'd always used before. The fact that he'd come here meant that he knew that Madara would also be here. Sasuke knew that Madara is Naruto's grandfather, and the one who trained him. He wasn't surprised like this in the same way as Kakashi. Could you be the reason behind Black Zetsu's disappearance? Madara asked, so casually. Yes, he is dead. Naruto responded in the same casual tone as his grandfather. There was no longer such a thing as Black Zetsu, he had consumed him. That is unexpected. But it does not matter anyway, he served his purpose. You're doing well with the hunt. And you seem to have gotten a power boost. I must say, I never expected you to hold such power, Madara stated, eyes narrowed at the blonde on his right. Neither did I, but it happened. How do you wish to do this? Naruto asked, looking at the cages, one by one. I was already thinking of blowing up because this was so damn infuriating. The dare they talk like that while in their presence. I only have interest in the cages, Madara gave his response. But the Uchiha over there seems to be interesting, he said, looking over to Sasuke. He did recognize that the left eye of Kakashi was one of Obito's eyes. Arrogant fools. Onoki yelled at the two. They dared converse so casually despite the current situation. He floated in the air and charged a particle-style jutsu at both Uchihas. Naruto merely raised his right hand, and the jutsu disappeared without harm. He is indeed an interesting fellow, he spoke, continuing with his conversation with Madara. I've prepared a battlefield for you in the cages. This environment isn't best suited for a good battle. That is fine by me. Madara responded calmly. Kuretsuchi couldn't believe it. They'd just ignored his grandfather in favor of continuing with their conversation and had dealt with his jutsu like it was nothing. Utterly unbelievable. What is the meaning of this, Naruto? Tsunade demanded in a stone-cold tone. Sasuke was asking himself the same question. It was Naruto who told him that he and Madara didn't agree on certain things, however, they looked to be getting along just fine. And Madara did not appear to be surprised by Naruto's new change. He seemed older now, no longer 17 years old. Gaara and Mei were also not surprised by his change. It led him to believe that they had seen him before in this change. Naruto didn't respond to anything. Hello Mei, he said with a small smile. Naruto, why didn't you tell me that you were going to come here? Mei asked, looking straight at the blonde. There was no need. I'm not the main attraction after all, Naruto responded before releasing a wave of pure chakra that sent everyone backwards. Even Madara was pushed slightly away from him. Such chakra, and I can feel that it was only a little that he released. Damn, he is indeed a monster, Onoki thought glaring down at Naruto. To be able to release such chakra without even lifting a finger was something impressive, not to mention that the chakra seemed very potent, far potent than what he had felt of Madara's long ago. Is it me or has he grown strong? Tsunade thought, hands held in front of her face, she had brought them out when she was shielding herself from the chakra Naruto had released. Naruto pointed at all the cages, counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he said before clasping both his hands putting everyone on guard. The cages disappeared in a flash of black and Madara followed suit. Where have you taken my brother? Temari demanded, holding her fan tightly. Naruto didn't respond, he locked eyes with Killer Bee. In an instant, he was right behind the Jinchuriki. The second he was faster than the Jinchuriki was all Naruto needed to send him away into another dimension where he would be able to extract the 8 tails without distractions. Sasuke quickly rushed towards Naruto and attempted a high kick at the blonde's temple. Naruto caught Sasuke's leg easily enough with his left hand, before pushing back to throw the Uchiha off balance. He made some distance between himself the guards of the cages. Stay here and don't make noise. Your cages will be, okay. He disappeared after those words escaped his lips. Darui shook his head. This had just become troublesome, and he'd thought that the cage meeting was going to be dull. He couldn't sense the Raikage anywhere and it also seemed that no one could sense them. He couldn't even sense B. This meant that they may be probably out of this country. If my brother dies, I'll kill that bastard. Temari promised. Somewhere. Naruto had teleported the cages and Madara to the place he'd battled Nagato. The place was good enough for Madara. Now then, why don't you show me the power of cages? Madara asked, looking at the cages before him. Looking at the notorious Uchiha, Gaara now knew why Naruto said those words. So this is why he told me to hit the training ground or else I would be a disappointment. He told you that too. Mei questioned, earning a nod from the cage. We'll have to work together if we are going to take him down, Tsunade said looking at her fellow cages. Madara had the Rinnegan as Naruto and the blonde seemed confident that the man could take them, underestimating him would not do them any favors. I agree with the Hokage. If he is anything like Naruto, we'll have to combine our efforts, Mei said in agreement with Tsunade. She had seen Naruto battle before and even spared with him before his change during some time he'd come to see her. Fighting someone like that alone was not advisable to anyone. I snorted and activated his lightning cloak. You can stand here talk, I'm attacking, the Raikage charged at Madara. Later as soon as the cages were all lying down on the ground, barely with any chakra left, Naruto jumped down into the battlefield. He had watched everything, and quite enjoyed watching the battle. It was a bit sad though that the battle was pretty one-sided. Even though the cages were formidable opponents, Madara was a mountain that could not be moved by anything normal. They all seem okay, Naruto stated, walking around the fallen cages. Their clothes were shredded to pieces, gashes and bruises all over their bodies, and their bodies were leaking some amounts of blood. Really, they leaking blood, and if they continued to leak more blood, they wouldn't be okay as Naruto put it. I figured you would have a headache if one of them ended up dying by mistake, Madara stated, looking straight at Naruto and his movements carefully. There was certainly something odd with the way he was walking. If his change in physical appearance was not enough to worry him, there was also the power increase. It would have been indeed a headache. 2 of them are allied with my country, it wouldn't have appeared good if they died. If anything, one could have just said I allowed them to be killed and was working with you to eliminate the cages, Naruto responded calmly, before standing over Mei. He placed his right hand on her forehead for a moment. They were all conscious, barely. It would not have mattered to you if one of them died. You don't really care for the other 3, Madara stated, standing a bit away from the fallen cages. Perhaps. But things are at a crucial stage right now, and I feel that I have been waiting for too long. I can't have anything going awry to disturb my preparations. Naruto responded while he was still standing beside the Mizukage. He then proceeded to walk away from her, but when he was passing the Raikage, the man grabbed his right leg. "Be bastard, you will pay for this." Naruto felt a spike of chakra from the man. Despite having little chakra left, he was still going to use all that he had to try and put some damage on him. If it was not desperate, he would have applauded it. A burst of lighting shot from the Raikage's hand and ran through his body. However, he did not even scream. In fact, he merely looked at the man dead in the eyes. "What will I pay for exactly?" He gritted his teeth. He was barely keeping himself conscious and that last trick had drained him. "For all these that you have done, for taking one of my bijou, you will pay. The bijouists don't belong to you. And I have not yet done anything bad. I only allowed Madara to have his fun. You shouldn't complain if you're still alive. If I want to, I could kill you right now," Naruto stated, ever so coldly. "You should be grateful that you're not dead, fool. I will get you for tea this, even if it is the last thing I do. And if you touched my brother, I'll kill you." "How boring," Naruto sighed. "The likes of you can't do anything to me. You failed to beat Madara, do you possibly think you can defeat me?" I didn't respond, his eyes closed off as he drifted off to sleep. "I wonder why you aren't finishing them off now," Madara stated in thought. He was certain that when they recovered, they would be planning to hunt them down. And it would get annoying to the point where it would result in their deaths. If they die now, the whole shinobi world will spring out of control. These cages are what keeps this balance, however, should they suddenly die, each great village will be without a leader. Most villages hate each other and their leaders are what keeps them from doing anything. If they died, each village would become like an angry mob. Everyone would run free, Naruto explained as he walked towards his grandfather. It would be fitting for the last stage of this world, Madara stated. For the world you are planning, it doesn't matter what kind of situation the world is currently at. Whether at war or not, it doesn't trouble Tasuki no me, Naruto responded looking over the sky. Madara said nothing about it. Did you collect the 8 tails? Yes. This leaves only the Kyuubi, Naruto responded, never looking at his grandfather even though he could feel the narrowed look the man was giving him. It didn't matter, he was certain that Madara would not attack him here. You work pretty fast, Madara commented. He'd moved quickly to seal the bijouists within the ghetto mazo. If he knew where the Kyuubi was located, he would act now. Knowing Naruto, it would be better for him to act now with the blonde seemingly incapable of utilizing all his powers. But not everything was completed. He would have to wait until the last piece was added. When will you seal the Kyuubi? Soon, Naruto responded. How did they do? They were not so bad, Madara said, knowing what Naruto was asking. He was a bit curious how they would have performed against the blonde though. However, he got the feeling that he was never going to see that. But it didn't matter anyway. Naruto was silent for a few moments. I guess I should bring them here, he said holding a single hand seal. As long as the guards were in that room, they were in contact with his chakra, this means that he could bring them here to this battlefield. The guards were all spat out by a portal that opened, just away from the cages. As soon as they appeared, they all rushed towards their cages, checking for a pulse. Naruto, I suggest you stand down or we will be forced to take you down as well as Madara. The battle with the cages must have surely taken a lot out of him. Kakashi said, raising his forehead protector. This is going to become boring, Naruto stated, as he disappeared from his grandfather's side. He appeared in the middle of the cages again, drawing the attention of the guards who were ready to slice him in half. I'll see you soon, Madara, he said before disappearing out of sight with the Mizukage, Kazekage and their respective guards. What just happened? Killer Bee questioned at Naruto's actions. Madara also found it curious as he had expected the blonde to leave things as they were. Naruto took away those he sees as allies to his country, Sasuke responded. I can say that this was nothing to both of them. Naruto said Madara just wanted to test the cages. It is obvious that Naruto would want to watch it since he was also interested. This would explain why no one died. Are you saying that he teleported the cages here just so they could test the powers of the cages? Darui questioned, looking at the legendary Uchiha, who seemed to be in thought. But he too disappeared. Yes. This was all just for their amusement, Sasuke said those words a bit bitterly than he intended. This was surely going to cause an international outcry, and Naruto just watched it happen. News was going to spread out fast that the cages were defeated by a single man. It wasn't a secret that Naruto's strength was comparable to Madara's. People were certainly going to be asking themselves questions now. If our cage couldn't do it, then who will? This just got even more troublesome. Both of them have the Sharingan, Rinnegan and can use Mokuden Jutsu, Kakashi said. The battlefield was a clear indication that Mokuden had been used on the battlefield. None of the cages could use Mokuden. If Madara had the Rinnegan like Naruto, then he had to be able to use Mokuden like Naruto. You cannot forget that Naruto appears to be much stronger than he was, and I bet it has to do with all his physical changes, Sasuke reminded his former sensei. He was now starting to think that the banishment just gave the blonde enough room to work. Later at Kiri, I thought I was actually going to die, Mei said, looking over her bandaged body. She really had been hit bad. That man was a monster just like Naruto. She had never been so outmatched in her life like she was when facing that man. Naruto-san said you would say something like that when you came to, Chojuro said, smiling a bit to his leader. Naruto. He brought us back after the battle with Madara. I thought that he had betrayed us when he told us not to interfere. But now I realize that we would have just died if we entered the battle, the Mist Nin stated, a bit down that he couldn't do anything to protect his leader. He was glad that she was alive though. He had told me to hit the training ground if I didn't want to be a disappointment. I don't think I would have been prepared for that battle even if I had trained tirelessly, Mei responded looking over to the ceiling. So he knew that the battle was going to take place. He probably knew that all the cages were going to survive, but why do you think he allowed you to face such a man? Chojuro questioned, all but curious about everything. Who knows? Mei really didn't know. What would you have done? She looked at Chojuro with a small smile. She was curious how he would offer his response. He was not the kind of person to express his opinion. She would offer him a chance to express himself whenever she got the chance. It would do well for his confidence. I don't think I would have allowed you to enter into such a battle. I mean, if I was the one to marry you, I would never allow anyone to hurt you like that, not when I have the power to stop it, Chojuro gave his honest opinion. He did so carefully so not to offend the Mizukage. You are sweet child Chojuro. I am sure you will make one girl a happy person. Her warm smile and sweet tone made the boy blush deeply. Naruto knows I am a shinobi. Pain is nothing for a shinobi. And we mostly learn through experiences. I can say that experiences are a whole lot more valuable than the things you hear and see. What experience could you have gained from such a dangerous battle? Even though I know Naruto, I was not sure that I would survive. And I was fighting that battle to win, not to put a good performance. Madara is not our ally, Naruto is. Even though those two seem to get along, not everything can go according to plan. Madara could have just decided to end our lives. When facing an opponent such as Madara, a lot of emotions are experienced. When the battle started, I was confident that we would win, but as the battle progressed, I realized we couldn't. We cages don't like each other, but during that battle we learned to work together to defeat a common enemy. When we started working together, we appeared as though we would win. However, our hopes were crushed. Even in our combined efforts, we couldn't win. But even though the situation was hopeless, we fought till our bodies could not. Chojuro was silent for a few moments, but Mei spoke again before he could. In that battle, I learned that when people share a common goal, they can work together despite being enemies. I also faced a hopeless situation, yet I kept going. I experienced true fear, true power, and what it means to fight a lost battle. I now know my limits and understand that what I believed to be true could be shattered before my eyes. Do you know what that does to me as a person, Chojuro? Mei smiled, a bit brightly. It makes me much stronger. Chojuro also smiled. Naruto-san must be a nice person to make you go through all that so you can become much stronger. I am not too sure about being nice, but he is not so bad. Does this mean that even his enemies learned what you learned? Mei shook her head. No, their hatred towards him has only intensified. Only I and the Cage possibly learned something this useful. The following day at Dragon Land, I see you're no different from the humans you hate, Kurama growled, glaring down at Naruto with a hateful glare. Its tails were swinging in barely contained fury and the winds behind it picked up dangerously, uprooting the trees within the area. I'm no different. You misunderstand me, Kurama. To me, you're not a weapon of chakra and a pet that needs to be tied down on a leash. I recognize your existence as a being powerful and with as much knowledge that no other human than me has, Naruto responded calmly, looking straight at the beast before him. He wasn't the least concerned by the display of power from the Biju. Kurama sneered. You've only been alive for a handful of years, human. Don't you dare think that you know about this world more than me. A roar and more winds picked up in front of Naruto, picking up some debris. Naruto stood still while his hair danced with the air, still not the least wary of the Biju. I existed before you did, Kurama. Naruto said, but didn't comment further on it. What I'm doing is simply setting things right before my eyes. Hashirama created you and others because he feared the rebirth of the Jubi. I fear no such thing, and will revive the Jubi. In doing so, you are going to deny my existence and the other Bijuis. Yes, Naruto didn't deny it. You shouldn't complain, Kurama. Your existence also brought the end of another being, should you complain if the same is to be done? Some humans eat animals for their survival, should they cry when animals eat them for their own survival? Kurama settled for glaring down at Naruto. It was indeed true that all 9 Bijuis were parts of the Jubi and were created by Hashirama when he separated the Jubi into 9 pieces, and they were parts of that being. However, that didn't make what Naruto was planning to do any right. He was alive and his existence wouldn't be rejected and denied by a mere human. Kurama, what good has your existence brought to this world? Humans aren't willing to understand you and merely use you for your power. Jinchurikis are born because you exist. You are used as equalizers within the shinobi villages because you exist. I seek to a new balance that won't have to depend on you, and a new world will arrive where there will no longer be Jinchurikis and your existence will be a mere memory. I will return you to your original form and correct the blunder that Hashirama made when he brought about your existence, Naruto stated staring deep into the eyes of the Biju. Foolish human. Do you even know the danger the Jubi poses? Do you even understand its power? Kurama hissed, ready to erase the existence of this pitiful human from the face of this wretched world. Do not treat me like a child, Kurama. I'm older than you, older than your old man, Naruto said, releasing a wave of powerful chakra that froze the great nine-tailed demon fox. Kurama had never felt so much chakra from a human. No, this was chakra that no human should possess. Not even the old man had this much chakra. Still, he wasn't going to go down without a fight. He raised his right paw and attempted to swat away the blonde under his might. However, before his paw could even hit the blonde, an invincible hand grabbed it when Naruto raised his right hand. It wasn't exactly a hand that grabbed him, but it felt like it. He couldn't even power his way out of the hold. His tail swapped towards Naruto in a blinding speed with intent to do greatly harm him if not kill him. However, another powerful force hit him. This time, he was pushed backwards by the force that hit him. Naruto was still standing in the same position he had been, but there was a large crater in front of him, created by the jutsu he used to blow Kurama away from him. Naruto went through hand seals, Kuchio's no jutsu, Gedo Mazo. In a large puff of smoke, the demonic statue of the outer path appeared into the land of dragons. Kurama quickly did a Bijudama and fired it at the statue, but before it could even hit, it was sucked into another dimension thanks to Naruto. Before Kurama could do anything, a portal opened above him and the Bijudama that had been sucked into another dimension was spat out towards him. He quickly brought out all his tails to protect himself from his own jutsu. The Bijudama hit the Biju and the contact created a large explosion that caused a mushroom of debris to pick up. Go Gedo Mazo, take the Kyuubi in, Naruto commanded and the demonic statue charged straight into the mushroom of debris. A few minutes later, I have finally found this place, Madara stated, as he appeared before Naruto who was sitting on top of the Gedo Mazo. He'd just finished sealing the Kyuubi, and this wasn't what he was expecting. Madara, Naruto said, looking down at the man with narrowed eyes. It can't be a coincidence that you happen to find this place just after I have sealed the Kyuubi. It is not. You have become too powerful and if I waste more time, you may just increase your power. I have no choice but to play my card. Interesting, Naruto stated, as he stood up. The Gedo Mazo disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto fell down the ground on both his feet. At this stage I've to forget about my fight with you, Madara stated, holding a single hand seal. It was then that Naruto felt excruciating pain all over his body. It felt as though his muscles were being torn apart one by one. The pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. He tried not to scream in pain. After a minute or so, his voice tore through the greenly land for a few minutes before it became silent. From shoulders to ankles, chakra rods sprouted around Naruto's body. He couldn't count how many they were, but almost his entire body was covered with those manipulative chakra rods. He was also panting and sweating heavily, a few blood drips coming from his mouth. How? I thought my death and being one with Kagaya would remove your hold over my body. Naruto spoke in a barely audible tone, eyes narrowing down at his grandfather. He didn't think that this would happen. This was the second surprise, the first being Black Zetsu. Hashirama cells infused with yours so that you didn't have to control them separately and didn't have to worry about them taking over your body once didn't have enough chakra to hold them. However, my cells are a different matter. I lied when I told you they would also fuse with you. They had no role in your awakening of the Rinnegan or Sharingan, Madara explained, walking towards an immobile Naruto. With the number of rods around the blonde's body, he had no doubt that Naruto would not be able to move for some time. You planted a seed for this in your own cells? Naruto asked, surprised, but it was still not evident on his face. How didn't I see this coming? I don't blame you not seeing it. You can't always see everything, Madara stated, stopping a bit close to Naruto. His Susanoo came to life, alarming Naruto. Do you plan to kill me? Madara merely smiled. Not at all. Why would I kill my only grandchild? Madara responded. However, his next action was contrary to his words. A blade of his Susanoo burst out from the ground behind Naruto and pierced through his back and came out of his gut. It was not to kill him, but to weaken his body. With a weakened body, there would be less resistance. I've no doubt that if I'd left you like that, you would have made things difficult, but I'm not quite done, yet. The blade was left embedded on him, even when Madara deactivated his Susanoo. Madara walked far closer to Naruto, prompting the blonde to ask. What are you doing, grandfather? You are much more powerful than me, I cannot even hope to equal you. I'd always known that you'd surpass me one day. However, even though I'm proud, I must succeed in the Moon of the Eye plan. Perhaps in that world, you will smile like your mother would have wanted you, Madara stated calmly. The last part caught Naruto's attention. His left eye widened a bit. What are you talking about? Naruto asked in a deathly quiet tone. When she died, she said some nice words to you. You just didn't understand because you'd just been born, Madara said, raising his right hand. That is for another day. What or why? Naruto was cut off when Madara drove his fingers inside his eye socket. If he hadn't been in enough pain already, now this. He suppressed by all his might the urge to let loose of a loud shrill. Madara took out his left eye. Naruto's heartbeat began to beat a bit faster. He didn't like where this was going. The Gedo Mazo must be in one of your dimensions and I can't summon it while you have it trapped in there. However, I know that I can't access your dimensions. This is why I took your left eye. White Zetsu also told me that it has a rather intriguing ability, Madara before pushing the eye into his empty right eye socket. He'd come prepared for this. What do you know of that eye ability? Naruto was growing paler by the minute and the fact that he was losing more blood was not doing him any good. I've restricted your movements, weakened your body, taken your left eye, and now I will take away your power. Though I've restricted your movements, you're not yet fully under my control. Naruto grit his teeth slightly. This wasn't good at all. If he allowed things to worsen than they were already, he'd probably end up unhealthy. However, he was not given much time to think because Madara clasped both his hands and the chakra rods begun to glow with Naruto's chakra. He could feel his chakra leaving him. The more chakra Madara took, the more his body weakened, and his hair color changed to white. However, the infamous Uchiha couldn't absorb everything. Why can I only take your chakra? Madara asked, feeling Naruto's power coursing through his body. The power he was feeling made him grin sickly as it was just unbelievable. To think that Naruto had this much power and he'd only taken some of it. That is my IU. Are using. In my ability. Naruto responded in between his labored breaths. Madara tried summoning the Gedo Mazo, but it still failed to appear. He was not deterred though. It only meant that Naruto had gone all out when hiding the statue from him. Stay right here, I'll search your dimensions for the Gedo Mazo, Madara stated before he disappeared into a portal. Naruto cursed. He couldn't even use his chakra, nor anything of his abilities. His weakened body and chakra didn't help any matter, and the lack of his right eye wasn't doing him any favors. He would eventually recover his power. However, the damage was grave. A few minutes later, Madara returned. His Susanoo came to life, and its blade swept past some trees before hitting Naruto with a direct hit. The hit sent a weakened Naruto flying and crashing into some trees. Madara was upon him again. The hand of his Susanoo grabbed him, squeezing his body. Where is it? Why can't I summon it? Despite some of his bones breaking under the squeeze of the Susanoo, Naruto managed to respond. I never said that was in one of my dimensions. And you can't summon it, even if you are using my I. As long as I exist in this world, the Gedo Mazo will only be summoned by me. Madara gritted his teeth and slammed Naruto down the ground. The chakra rods tore through Naruto's body, inflicting more damage. His perfect Susanoo came to life. Its blade sped towards the downed blonde, but didn't pierce him. It cut through to the ground and remained there. Relinquish your control over it. And no. Madara didn't think twice. He pulled out his blade from the ground before doing a downward swing at Naruto. The blade of his Susanoo hit the ground and the impact created a resounding boom. Madara turned away from the debris that had picked up in front of him. Naruto was crawling away from him. He is regaining his mobility, Madara thought, realizing what was happening. However, to be able to dodge that attack, the blonde must have sacrificed some of his power, weakening him further. It still worked well for him. He cut through the air with his Susanoo's blade, sending a power wave at the crawling blade. A number of trees were cut down and large amounts of debris picked up under the swing of his blade. The blast that was let loose hit Naruto, sending him further away from his grandfather. Madara dispersed his Susanoo and followed after Naruto. He found the blonde, barely standing, cloak torn apart, a few remaining chakra rods still fully embedded around his body, blood flowing out freely of his mouth, and some other parts of his body. Will you summon the Gedo Mazo, or do I have to kill you and find it myself? Madara questioned, standing away from Naruto. Naruto breathed a bit, before falling down on his knees. Do as you like, he finally said. What I wanted was for you to relinquish control over the Gedo Mazo, but you don't want to do that. I guess I've no choice but to take both your eyes. It should be enough for me to claim the statue. He started to take giant steps towards Naruto. Now, Naruto wasn't going to allow himself to become blind. The beating he'd received had broken off some chakra rods, and this gave him the spade he needed to dig himself out of this hole Madara had put himself. Before Madara could steal Naruto's right eye, the blonde held out his right hand, fists balled before opening it. A small black ball appeared. Madara didn't waste a second to make some distance between him and Naruto. Boom. A large explosion rocked through and created some gusts of wind. Dust picked up and Madara was forced to shield himself to avoid being blinded by the debris and being hit by the gusts of winds. When the explosion cleared, there was nothing but a large crater and no Naruto. TCH, Madara growled. He got away. Chapter 36 Deck 23 The War Council of Konohagakure no Sato was within its chambers discussing the future plans that were to take place. As agreed during the Cage Summit, Tsunade would send every little thing she knew about Madara and some things about Naruto to both Iwagakure and Kumogakure. They were supposed to return for another summit again to continue with the talks, since nothing concrete was ever resolved because Madara and Naruto had decided to gate-crash their meeting. It was unlikely that they would meet again, though. The incident had caused an outrageous reaction from most people, especially those within Konoha. Once the villagers got hold of the fact that Naruto had crashed into the Cage Summit along with Madara and merely watched while the legendary Uchiha battled the cages, they were furious with him. He was working with a traitor to their village, a traitor that attacked their cage and nearly killed her. It was unacceptable. Possibly Naruto would never be forgiven for this act. As it stood, even if they wanted Naruto to come back to the villagers wouldn't accept him. Even though he didn't really take part in the battle himself, he was still there and merely watched. Are you certain that he isn't working with Madara? Tsunade questioned in an all-serious tone, looking straight at the remaining Uchiha within the village walls. It was hard to believe that Naruto and Madara weren't working together. The way they talked to each other, the way they did things, and their powers, it all made it now simple to believe that they were indeed related. The two Uchihas spoke like they were good friends or something. One couldn't say they were enemies, she doubted they even considered themselves to be enemies. Yes, I'm positive. Before Naruto left, he told me that they don't agree on their ideals. This means that whatever plans Madara has, Naruto doesn't agree with it. However, this doesn't guarantee that Naruto will stop him even if he doesn't agree with the plans, Sasuke answered calmly. Because they don't agree in their ideals, it does not mean that they don't agree on certain things. That still doesn't give us the assurance that they aren't working together. If anything, they seem to be working well together. At the summit, Naruto held the guards while Madara fought us. If something like this happens again, it may be in reversed roles, Tsunade stated, shaking her head slightly. This was giving her a headache. It could be possible that even though they don't agree on their ideals, they still get along just fine. We have seen this, and can confirm. There is, however, nothing to prove that right now they aren't sitting together while they plot something, Sum stated, giving her own opinion on the matter. We've made the basis that they get along. What we cannot confirm is whether they are working together or not, Jiraiya stated, trying to get the discussion going so that they didn't get stuck going on in the same matter. I've said it, they are not working together, Naruto told me himself. The problem would be whether Naruto will be willing to stop him or not, Sasuke stressed. The thing that got this people wrong with Naruto was that they didn't understand him. He understood bits about the blonde, but he was certain that only Madara understood him fully. Well, Naruto isn't the one to hide behind the bush. If he was working with Madara he would have said so, Shikaku stated not so lazily like he always does. What he did know about the blonde was that he was very blunt and a straightforward person. He didn't do hints. Hiashi nodded in agreement to Shikaku's words. I also think if he was working with Madara, he would have told us. As Sasuke has said, the big question is whether he will stop him or not. This is indeed troublesome, Chusa stated sighing. He ensured that Madara had his fun with the cages, and merely watched as he beat them up, who is to say he won't do it again? That will depend, Sasuke started. It will depend on whether the situation favors him or not. What I've realized is that Naruto doesn't do things for fun, he always has a purpose. He also doesn't do anything that does not favor him. If it favors him, he could simply watch as Madara does as he plans to do. Sasuke is indeed correct, Inoichi added, with a nod. When you look at what has happened after we banished him, you can see why he didn't even put a fight. There are many things that have happened since we banished him, and it seems like he'd been waiting for us to do it. I did tell you that if it was still going according to his plans, he wouldn't put up a fight. But things are just moving way faster than I would like. This pace of things does not give us much time to make sound preparations, Jiraiya spoke again, in a bit of a tired voice. Why then, did he allow Madara to attack the cages? I think he knew that it would not look good on him with the villagers if he did that. Then why would he deliberately do something that would put him at odds with the villagers? What did he gain by allowing the cages to fight Madara? Shiba Aburame questioned something that was bothering him. He had a feeling of an answer, but he didn't want to accept it. By the looks of things, it seemed like he has only made himself look bad more than anything. If capturing the Bijoux wasn't enough, he had to crash into the cage summit. Perhaps it was all that he wanted, or there is something that we are missing, Shikaku stated, looking thoughtful for a moment. Or there could be nothing into it. That was a thought that they never considered. But it was not that important at this given time. The fact that Naruto has hunted down all the remaining Bijoux makes things very complicated. We don't even know what he is planning to do with them. What we know is that he is just doing what the Akatsuki was doing. The problem is that we were never able to figure out just what the Akatsuki wanted to do with the Bijoux, Sum stated. This was a matter that worried her the most. They were now assuming that Naruto had all the Bijoux with him, and whatever he was planning with that amount of power wasn't bound to be good. I think we have to finally accept that Naruto is up to something. He has committed crimes against other great villages and they want his head. We cannot also ignore the fact he did something that he knew would put him in a bad light in the eyes of our villagers. Hiyashi stated something that no one seemed to be willing to bring out. As much as it pains me to say, I have to agree with Hiyashi. We have been focused on what Madara may be planning or what Naruto will do about Madara. We have never considered the thought that Naruto may have his own plans. It could be that both have their own plans. Naruto cannot disagree with Madara's plan if he doesn't have his own plan, Jiraiya stated, not sounding happy about this. So are you finally getting over your mixed emotions and come to a rational conclusion, Homura stated smoothly. I suggest the best ranking for him in the bingo book is SS rank and Madara as well. No one seemed to disagree with this. I'll have that worked as soon as we leave here, Tsunade said, before turning to look at Sasuke who looked amused. What is it? I wonder what Naruto will do about this. Technically, he hasn't committed any crime against this village and branding him an SS rank criminal only means that you can no longer welcome him back after things settle down. I've no doubt that Naruto dislikes the villagers, but I wonder what he will do when he knows about this. I also wonder if you all prepared to be enemies of Uchiha Naruto. We have no choice but to be prepared for anything, Inoichi stated. But now that they have decided to make Naruto their enemy, it means that they will have to fight him in the near future. It was obvious that the villagers would never accept him back into the village. Naruto had said he would return when he wants to, but the question was whether he would be returning in good terms or with other intentions. Just so you understand everything, I will remind you, Sasuke stated calmly. You are about to make an enemy with someone who was abused by the villagers of this village because he was a Jinchuriki despite being the son of the previous Hokage. He hasn't made it a secret that he holds no love for the villagers. He possibly has 9 Bijuis under his control, and his own power rivals a man who defeated the 5 Kages. Need I add that he totally overpowered them? There was some tense silence for a few moments before Tsunade spoke. I understand all, but we cannot cower because the odds don't look good for us. This is our choice, and I hope never to regret it. We have been living long enough. We will see this through. Homura stated. Then how do we go about dealing with both Uchihas? At the moment, it doesn't matter what they are planning. What is important is that they are both too powerful to be left roaming around the world freely. The others nodded in agreement. What of Yugao? Doesn't she know anything? Hiyashi asked. If she knew something, then they would have to be aware of it. The fate of the village depended on how much information they could gather. Tsunade was surely not going to tempt Naruto's ire by having Inoichi examine Yugao's mind to determine whether the blonde informed her of certain details about his plans. Naruto already hated the village. Doing something to Yugao would only add more wood to the fire that was already burning. She could only hope that Hiyashi had nothing like that in mind. No, Naruto didn't tell her anything, Sasuke responded, shaking his head slightly. Naruto's sense of love is quite different. I thought that given time he would act normal, but I soon realized that it was impossible. Regardless of how he felt about Yugao, he didn't tell her anything. This is troubling. We don't know what he is planning and how we are going to stop him. Chusa stated, sounding a bit frustrated by everything. Naruto was already too powerful to deal with and they could be dealing with both Naruto and Madara. That is one ending that he hoped Kami wouldn't script for them. I think our best option is to work with both Kumogakure and Iwa. This will reduce the causalities we may face and ensure that we get enough power to tackle the problem, Shikaku suggested. That is sound, Tsunade then nodded to herself after a few thoughts passed her mind. But it will depend on what the Tsuchikage and Raikage will say. However, the fact that we have 2 Sharingan users makes it hard for them to say otherwise. What of Sunagakure and Kurigakure? Inoichi questioned quietly. Both were their allies, so they ought to also help them out. Don't count them in, Tsunade responded quickly. Both of them seem to be in contact with Naruto. They have yet to say anything about the fact that we have banished Naruto, and I doubt that they will do anything against him. Isn't it that both were at his country's capital a few days ago? Sasuke nodded in agreement. They were both not surprised by Naruto's change. This means that Naruto had talked to both of them after the change. There is also the fact that out of the 5 Kages, they weren't much surprised when Madara challenged the leaders. Naruto must have informed them about what was going to happen. Hiyashi said. It appears that way. Jiraiya said calmly. Fighting Naruto means fighting his country. But I don't think that it will survive an attack from 3 great villages. Still, to get to his country, they would have to get past Naruto, and that was a task that seems to need the hands of Kami and the forces of nature working with them. Tsunade nodded. We can discuss that later after we have talked to both Iwa and Kumogakure. She stated, before looking at Sasuke. What did you feel from Naruto at the summit? Sasuke sighed. This was going to shock the whole room if he didn't color it. He was a lot stronger than he was when he left. Even though he didn't fight, I can say that he had much more chakra than Madara did. You are saying that he is currently stronger than Madara. Shikaku said. It wasn't a question. This was man who defeated the 5 Kage was not as strong as Naruto. This was just troublesome. He wasn't expecting the blonde to have become even stronger. That isn't good. It only makes it even more difficult to fight him. What do you think caused his change in physical appearance though? Jiraiya questioned, looking at Sasuke, who knew the blonde better than anyone within the chambers. I don't know. I really don't know. Whatever caused it, seems to have made him much powerful. Sasuke responded, shaking his head. This was all mysterious to him. He tried figuring out what had happened, but he couldn't get the answers. I'm told that Naruto lives in a palace that is far above in the sky above his country's capital. I hear people saying that the formation in the sky is like an island in the middle of an ocean. It is green as the fire country. Is there any truth to it? Homura questioned, changing the subject. The people there call it the Emperor's home, the Holly Palace, the Imperial Palace, or the Holly Ground of Kami-sama, Jiraiya revealed quietly. I can say that it does exist and Naruto does live in there. It is said after the Kage summit, he was only seen once at the capital. I don't know about other things. No one has ever gone there. Let us assume that no one but Naruto himself has ever gone up there. It is a safe bet to say that only Naruto can go there, and those he takes, Shikaku suggested. The implications of his words were not missed by anyone. I have to agree with you. But we can't leave it like that. We have to find a way to be able to get to him. And has anyone figured out why he would choose to live up there? Jiraiya had also heard that Naruto really does nothing. Gurren was the one who leads the actually day-to-day activities while Naruto just watches. I don't know. But I assume that it has something to do with whatever he is planning, Shikaku stated, shaking his head at the lack of information. There were many things that were unknowns to them and it wasn't healthy. Has anyone considered that Madara and Naruto could come here to destroy this village? Sume asked. The very thought of it brought dread into her heart and made her outer layer of skin cold. If both those two attacked Konoha, she doubted they would live to see another day. Silence. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, Sasuke said, folding his across his chest. He was most likely to watch it happen if the forces of nature dragged things to that path. He had nothing to protect in Konoha, no strong attachments towards the village. Both Naruto and Madara have something in common, Konoha. Madara fled from the village and turned traitor, and Naruto was banished. The only thing that Madara cared for in this village was the Uchiha clan, and that is no longer there. Naruto loathes Konoha. And his banishment only intensifies his hatred, Jiraiya said in looking in thought. He didn't realize he was speaking aloud. The two of them could combine their efforts and destroy our village. He trailed off when he realized that everyone was staring at him with mixed expressions. December 24th, capital of Rice. Yugito passed the gate of the capital without any difficulty. They didn't even look at her papers. Once she arrived at the gate, a Chunin offered to walk her to her destination. This only birthed a thought that they had been informed of her coming or the security was just lax. On her right, there were a number of buildings, a lot of noise was coming from the direction. She could only guess that it was the shopping district. It sounded lively with the noise that invaded her senses. On her right were a number of tall buildings, she could only identify the hospital. In front of her were what she presumed to be apartment blocks, and up ahead above was the now famous Crystal Palace. Yugito decided to enjoy the scene a bit more and wandered about the streets with the Chunin following her from behind. She'd noted that the Chunin wore no Chunin flank jacket, his forehead protector. The symbol on the forehead protector was shaped like the Uchiha fan symbol, but inside of it was a swirl of the Uzumaki clan. Yugito stared at the buildings ahead of her with a sad smile on her face. It was her first time coming here, but it was cool as she had been told. She never thought that this place would possibly be like this. She had so far only heard rumors about this place, but looking at it by her own eyes, she could see it was a happy place. The looks of the residents were very different she got from Kumogakure, her own home. She couldn't believe that this was the place that Naruto led. From home, people painted a horrible picture of her fellow blonde, even stories coming from Iwagakure weren't good ones. But how could someone called evil incarnate lead such a healthy country? They say that he was power hungry and will do anything for power, they say that he was controlling and forced people into his will. But looking at this people, she couldn't say any of those. She had looked at his expression on different occasion and she could say that he was not exactly what you call a nice person, but he didn't appear to be so bad. Even the happy smiles of these people didn't appear to be forced. No, they were truly happy. This was not the place she would wish to destroy. Yes, I was planning to destroy this place with all of Kumo's might. But these people were innocent. They haven't done anything. Kumo's problem laid with Naruto, should they not just hunt him down and deal with him instead of involving the innocents? Technically, Naruto didn't lead this country. He could be called a founder of the imperial kingdom of rice fields, even though the kingdom was built on an existing country. The woman called Gurren was said to be the one who did everything. She was said to be the one who controlled most things. Some even said that Naruto allowed her to do as she pleased. However, it was all just rumors. It is truly majestic, isn't it? The Chunin leading Yugito towards the Crystal Palace stated, looking straight the palace. It was indeed majestic despite the fact that it was currently being reshaped. There were workers around the palace, working hard in extending the palace. A wall was being built around the place, and it was surrounded by a number of buildings. From where she stood, Yugito could see that there were other tall buildings behind the palace. However, it did appear that the palace itself was being increased in height. Yugito said nothing for a few moments. What is that? She questioned looking at the object that was far above the capital. Despite being above the capital, it did block the sun from shining down the capital. There was not even its shadow imprinted down. Of course she knew what it was, but she was curious as to hear how the people of this capital would call it by her own ears. That is where His Majesty lives. I have never been there myself. Rumor from the Crystal Palace say that it is quite a beautiful place. His Majesty. Oh, most people now call Naruto-sama His Majesty. He is the king of this country after all. An imperial kingdom is led by a king or a queen. The Chunin responded, ever so smiling. You could tell he held some pride for his king. Yugito merely nodded. You seem to respect him a lot. Have you ever seen him in person? While for a Kage it would be rare for villagers not to see him in person, Naruto didn't appear to be a person who liked other people's company. So to her, it wouldn't be a surprise if some hadn't even seen him in person. Yes, I saw him once. But it was a few weeks ago while he was building the new wall. Of course, I didn't get a good look on his face. The Chunin paused for a moment before speaking again. My respect for him is not just because of his power. Even though Gurren-sama is the one who oversees everything in the capital, it was His Majesty's efforts that saw this place standing. I work in a safe environment and can provide for my family because of him. I'd say that my respect is warranted. To many of us, he is like a savior. A savior, huh? That would make them like the people of Kurigakure. Because of his efforts during the Civil War, they now hailed him as the hero and savior. Don't you feel afraid that your Majesty is branded an international criminal and other villages will probably attack and may siege to this place? Smiling, the Chunin shook his head. You see, I don't come from this country. I was a shinobi in a small village. Getting work was very hard, but when I heard about him, I came looking for work and I got it. It also pays well. But that is not why I do not fear anything. This capital is protected by strong men. I tell you, whenever I walk about these streets, I know that I'm safe. That aside, His Majesty is still alive. And Gurren-sama told us that as long as we can still see His Majesty's palace, no enemy will set foot on our home and destroy it. I believe that. And what is there to be fearful of if His Majesty is stronger than the man who defeated the 5 Kages? Yugito couldn't really say anything for a few moments. It seems like this place appears like it will be that place where dreams come true. It already is. Many of the people came here seeking for a new start of life. You see that building? He pointed at a building that was 2 blocks away from the hospital. The building was about 15 floors tall, and it was not the tallest building within the capital. That is the HQ of a business owned by the Imperial Kingdom. My younger sister works there. I don't really know what she does, but it is related to accounting. Many people have been employed there, as long as they had the right qualities. There are those civilians who dream of working in one of the biggest company in the world. My sister is one of them and her dream is now a reality. That couldn't have come out of Naruto's head. It had to be Gurren who came up with that thought. Yugito would be freaked out if she is told that it was Naruto's idea to make dreams of other people's come true. I've seen enough. Can I ask something, miss? The Chunin questioned, looking straight at Yugito. The woman nodded. May I know what a Kumogakure shinobi is doing in enemy territory? I figure that if your Raikage is seething because His Majesty took away your Biju, you would also be seething. Yugito narrowed her eyes. She wasn't even wearing her Kumogakure headband. Not everyone from outside her village would recognize her. How do you know all that? Depending on our ranks, all of us who guard the capital are privileged to know most things. When we are informed, we are able to identify and know whoever enters the gates of the capital. My reason for coming is none of your business, Yugito responded coldly. The Chunin merely smiled. You don't have to be so cold, Yugito-san. I was merely curious, he stated, in a smooth tone, not even bothered by her cold tone. I do agree, you have seen enough. Follow me. Nothing further was said. She was led straight to the Crystal Palace. They passed a few rooms, halls, until they reached the third floor. The Chunin left her at Gurren's door. Yugito didn't wait for an invite to step into the office. Once she got into the office, she found the woman in charge of the country working peacefully alone, sitting behind her large desk. You came here sooner than he expected. Gurren stated as Yugito took a seat. Where is he? Yugito demanded, looking straight at Gurren. She was here for Naruto, nothing else mattered. Watch your tone, Yugito-san. Gurren warned smoothly. Of course she wasn't going to allow anyone to speak to her like that. Naruto is not here. I haven't seen him in more than a week. And I can only get there when I am called. But if you are going to speak like that, I may decide against informing him of your arrival. Listen here, Gurren-san, Naruto took away something important to me and he told me to come here so he could fix things. You either get him down here or I'll find a way to get him down. Yes, she was stubborn and would not submit easily. You are misunderstanding things, Yugito-san. Gurren stated, drawing the blonde's full attention. He didn't call you here because he wanted to fix things. It is only pity because he was a Jinchuriki like you. However, that pity can be withdrawn in the blink of eye. Yugito gritted her teeth, and contained herself before speaking in a smooth tone. Will you bring him down here? It depends. Before Yugito could respond, Naruto's voice spoke. It is all right, Gurren. His choice was barely a whisper. He wasn't even facing the two women when he spoke. His head was facing the other side, giving the two women a view of his right side. Yugito quickly spun around because he spoke behind her and she hadn't even felt his presence. So His Majesty finally decided to grace me with his presence, that was bitter sarcasm. Naruto gave no response to it. He had no response for such petty words. You really shouldn't allow people to speak to you like that, Gurren stated with a sigh. Really, she hated it when someone spoke to him like that or spoke trash about him. But he did not care. The usual reaction was a blank stare. Naruto turned around to face the door. I will consider that, he said. Follow me, Yugito. Yugito stood up to follow him, but before she could take a step towards him, they both disappeared into nothingness. Gurren merely went back to her work. Imperial Palace. When her eyes started seeing again, Yugito found herself standing in a large hall. The hall was dimly lit, she couldn't see clearly what was around her. The air around her was a bit oppressing, but she held her nerve well. She figured that she had been teleported into Naruto's own palace. She looked ahead, and saw him. He was sitting on a throne, with his head resting on his palm. The only thing that glowed in the hall was his left Sharingan eye. Yugito took a single step forward, and the lights went out. But she never lost her sense, she could feel where things were. And Naruto's eye gave her the direction to take. She took 4 steps further towards him. He never moved, nor even blinked. However, when she moved on to her 6th step, he spoke. Don't come near. Everything felt wrong with his tone. His voice lacked the usual firmness and power it always carried. Something was wrong here. She took another step forward, despite his warning. Don't come near. He spoke again. But this time she defined what it was that felt wrong in his tone. His voice was weak. It was like that of someone who was bedridden. She put the voice together with the Naruto she saw when he took away her biju and found it hard to believe that it was his voice. She'd never heard him feel so weak, nor did she ever think she would get the feeling from him. The man who took away everything from her felt weak. But she needed to confirm it. She defiled him and took another step forward. Her next step was like a switch to the lights. When they went on, she felt the something calling for her attention around her, but she ignored it all and settled for looking straight at Naruto. Her feet finally carried her closer to Naruto. She could feel that he was alone. The oppressing air was not coming from the blonde, no, it was coming from the palace itself. The aura Naruto gave screamed weak. His skin was frighteningly pale, and his eye didn't look cold as always. His expression was a mixture of grimness and impassiveness, she couldn't define the final product. One thing was certain, it didn't belong there. He was her enemy, he took away her reason to live. She was no longer useful to I because of him. Those few who respected her, no longer did because she could no longer do what she used to do, perhaps it was her own feelings. Now she was being told to stay out of other things because they were too dangerous for her. It wasn't that she was weak, but without Matabi, she wasn't as strong as she was. It made her realize that she was seen as powerful because of her biju. Even without it, she was still Jonin level in strength. Yet, she was now being treated like a genin. She now felt useless, because of him. Yes, it was his fault. Her instincts screamed for her to laugh at him for looking so pathetic. She wanted to take advantage of his weakness and tear him apart before claiming his head and raising it high. But her heart sang otherwise. She moved a bit closer, and ran her hand across his right cheek. He never even twitched or blinked. His skin was cold enough to send shivers across her body. Without even thinking about it, Yugito still kept her hand on his cheek, and her face was dangerously close to his. Are you okay? There was concern in her tone. She did not know where it was coming from. He was her enemy after all. Are you trying to become intimate with me, woman? If it wasn't for his weak tone, Yugito would have taken a step away from him. Are you alright? She asked again. She retrieved her hand from him and stood still, waiting for his response. He finally blinked, but he still did not move. Why have you come here? And answer carefully. Knowing that she wasn't going to get an answer, Yugito responded to his question. You took away something that made me useful to my village. I don't wish to be useless. You said if I wanted to become useful I should come to you, and here I am. I will not be happy once he hears that you are dealing with the enemy. He didn't wait for her input on his words. Since you are willing to deal, I will give you what you desire. But not now. Be a little patient. Yugito couldn't help herself. I figured you wouldn't be able to do anything in this pathetic state. What happened to you anyway? Naruto closed his eyes and the lights went out. After I give you what you desire, you'll have to do something for me. That was all he said before her presence was rubbed away from his palace. Yet even after those words, Yugito didn't feel like she would come to regret anything. She did not think he would have her do anything bad. But if he wished for her to do bad or betray her village, she would rather die than do as he wishes. She knew that the Raikage was going to be furious with her. But she wasn't going to concern herself with anything. And she wasn't telling anyone what she saw. If she did that, I would march his forces into the capital of Rice and lay siege to it. Countless innocents would be lost. She didn't want to have that in her conscience. The following day, Konoha, this is becoming quite a familiar sight, Kakashi said as he walked over to the Ikaraku ramen. He was referring to Yugao chatting with Ayame while the former ate her ramen. He knew that the only thing the two have in common is Naruto. Senpai, are you stalking me? Yugao asked, looking at the former Anbu captain at the corner of her eyes. She had noticed that the Jonin has been checking her out more often after it became public knowledge that Naruto was involved in the incident that saw the defeat of the 5 Kages by Uchiha Madara. Maybe, Kakashi shrugged before ordering his ramen. No, you can just admit it that you are worried about me. I won't bite you, it is not like there is nothing wrong with being worried over someone, Yugao stated with a small smile on her face. I am worried, Kakashi said, rather calmly. Now was that really hard? Yugao asked, turning around to face the Jonin. Really, Kakashi had to be honest with his emotions. He always liked to bottle things on his own. Even though he was worried, he never says it unless things become worse. She couldn't say that Naruto was like that. What she had realized with him was that even though he loved her, he didn't have much in terms of feelings and emotions. There was nothing much he could express because he probably had nothing to express. He just wasn't like other people when it came to emotions. Not really. Again, Kakashi shrugged. This action earned a sigh from Yugao. Ayame came back with his ramen and he took it. Then, what is it? How are you? He wasn't looking directly at her when he questioned. His eyes were looking down at his ramen bowl. It was the first time he asked her that question since everything. Perhaps it was because things had now reached a critical stage. I am fine. I have been telling everyone that I am fine. Seriously. I have to deal with this from Kurenai and Anko. Yugao shook her head as she spoke. It was like she had cancer with the way her friends bothered her about Naruto. And honestly, it was becoming annoying. They are just worried about you, Yugao-san. You were the one who was closest to him before he left, Ayame interjected on the conversation between the two. Her expression wasn't that cheerful as it has always been, but she had a smile nonetheless. Someone should also be worrying about you, Ayame, Yugao said, turning the tables onto the other female. I may have been in a relationship with Naruto, but you were somewhat his family when he was little. My relationship with him was short, but your relationship with him has been going on a long time. Both Ayame and Kakashi noticed that she addressed her relationship in past tense and Ayame's relationship in present. But neither was willing to comment on it, for now at least. It just went to figure that Yugao considered her relationship with Naruto over. Both knew that she didn't think like just that after Naruto left. I am alright. I am used to Naruto disappearing. It isn't so bad since he said goodbye this time. This earned raised brows from both Yugao and Kakashi. He actually came to say goodbye to you? Kakashi asked, looking straight at Ayame. The woman nodded with a sad smile on her face. You know, I have always thought that you meant more to Naruto than anyone in this world. I don't think Naruto himself is aware of this fact, but I believe that if he were to choose between me and you, he would choose you, Yugao stated, surprising Ayame. What was most surprising was that she didn't sound bitter about it. I hardly think so. Anyone would choose their lover over a stranger, Ayame said, shaking her head. But then again, Naruto is not anyone. But she still found it hard to believe. Nevertheless, the thought that she was the human who meant more to Naruto than anyone, gave her heart a warm feeling, a feeling that she wanted to hold on to until she sees him again. Yugao shook her head, standing firm on what he had said. I am serious, Ayame. Do you even know the reason Naruto comes to eat ramen? She paused for a moment to allow the other woman to think. He does it for you, not for the love of ramen. He comes here to eat ramen so he can see you smile. Naruto does that for no one. He doesn't do anything for anyone, unless it works better for him. And I would ask, what does Naruto gain by making you smile? Ayame didn't say a word. She never really did think it like that. She recalled when she told him never to leave the village for some without telling her, and he kept his promise. Before Yugao, she was the only person he showed his smile, she was the only person he cared enough to ask for her health. He also made sure that he was here often to eat ramen. But was it really all just for her? Kakashi spoke, agreeing with Yugao. Now that you say it, I think you have a point. Ayame is the only person within the village that he actually conversed with. And he was willing to talk about trivial matters with her, something he doesn't do. He paused for a moment and fixed Ayame a look. I don't really know what Naruto thinks of you, but you are the closest thing he has ever had to a family. I think that is something that can never be replaced. Ayame still did not say a word for a few moments. She did say something though. This is overwhelming, she said and looked at Yugao. You are not bitter about it. I'd imagine that you would be a little jealous about it. Women tend to be jealous when those they love value someone over them, Kakashi added, narrowing his eye at Yugao. Yugao chuckled, a bit bitterly. I was indeed jealous and furious about it when I realized it. I mean, I am the one he loved, yet someone was far more important to him than me. I had to be bitter. But I am not a selfish person. Ayame did for Naruto more than any of us ever did, she became his friend when he had no one. I was his protector, yet he still received those beatings. But Ayame was always here, waiting for him to cheer him up. It would be selfish for me to say she doesn't deserve to be high up there. But, Ayame was cut off by Yugao. Look, Ayame. I love Naruto, I really do. But when he came to tell me he was leaving, I didn't even try to persuade him to take me with him. My heart was torn between my love for him and for Konoha. I swore my loyalty to Konoha and I vowed that I would never betray this village over anything. When the situation came, I chose Konoha. But if it had been you, you would have left with him. Here I am. I have not even once gone to see him since he left. Things have gotten even worse now since the villagers call him a traitor. I could never give my whole heart to him. And given the current situation, I never will. But that is how things are and I have accepted that. Even though I love Naruto, I can't leave my family, my friends, this village I have lived my life protecting. I can't betray it all. I believe that I will find happiness again. Nevertheless, I am happy that I was able to show him what it means to be loved. Yugao never broke down, she kept her voice calm and never shed a tear. This was enough for Ayame to realize just how hard the life of a shinobi really is. To sacrifice personal things for your own village, she never thought anything like that. But here, it was a reality. Some people had to make such choices. No wonder some were branded traitors or lost their heads. Being a shinobi was not all about cool jutsus and being strong. I understand that Yugao, Kakashi stated, a bit grimly. But you cannot always put the village above everything else. I know someone would call it treachery coming from me, but sometimes it is better to follow your own dream than the village's. Yugao smiled sadly. You don't understand it, do you, Kakashi? Now, she rarely called the Jonin by his name. It was a surprise to Kakashi that she did. Naruto is called a traitor by this village's people. The leaders will most likely follow the same path. And soon, the village might clash with him. No, with each passing day, I believe that we will clash with him. If I had left with him, do you realize what would happen? Kakashi widened his eyes and swallowed hardly. Ayame looked confused, making Kakashi explain it to her. Konoha is certain to clash with Naruto and if Yugao had left with him, she would have been forced to fight her friends, family and everyone she once held dear. It would be either her or her friends. Even if she chooses to die so that she doesn't face her friends, Naruto would not be pleased by it. Oh, that was the only sound Ayame could make. Kumogakure. The trip back to Kumogakure was relatively spent within her mind. It was not long since Naruto had sent her away from the borders of his country. She was not much in a hurry to return home, but she forced herself to speed up because she thought the Raikage may be looking for her. She had left the village without notice. Her mind was preoccupied with the state she had seen Naruto in. It was kind of sad to see him like that. He seemed like the one who was proud of his power. Yet, he seemed like he had been stripped of it. Even though he was her enemy, she felt something in her heart when she saw him like that. It got her curious, who could have done something like that to him? Could it be Madara? But, he looked like he was really, really sick. He did not seem like he was suffering from injuries he got from a battle. A few weeks ago, he looked fine, but now he looked miserable. Nevertheless, he was still Uchiha Naruto. She thought that only forces of nature and Madara could do that to him. It was still a surprise to her that he would allow her, the enemy, to see him in that state. Perhaps he was testing her. Of all the Jinchurikis, she was the only one he personally chose to save. He even offered to give her something that would make her useful again. Normally, she would have refused since he was the enemy and someone her Raikage wanted to murder. Yet, even after that, she sought after him. He did not touch her, but only said he would want her to do something for him. Why did she not refuse to agree to anything back then? Why did she not care about what the Raikage would say about her visit to the enemy? Why did she even touch him as she did and look at him with concern? It was all confusing her. Sometimes she stopped and looked at the hands that touched the enemy of her village with concern. Why did she do it? You look troubled. The smooth voice of Samui brought Yugito out of her thoughts. She had now been walking on the ground knowing that she was close. Samui was standing on a tree branch in her front. Naruto, got to you. How did you know where I was? You've been followed since you entered the borders of the Cloud Country, Samui responded as she jumped down. Yugito walked towards her before responding. I have been so lost in thought that I never noticed. she said, shaking her head. What did you mean Naruto got to you? There are little things that interest me. But when I met him, my world suddenly became bigger and I found myself interested in him. He is an interesting person after all. My conversation with him was actually cool. Without even knowing it, he got to me, Samui stated as the two began to move forward. I don't understand what you are saying, Yugito said, but got the feeling that she was not going to get an explanation. It's okay, Samui said. Did you get what you wanted? No, he told me to be patient. Yugito looked at Samui curiously. Why do I get the feeling that you are familiar with Naruto? Samui did not respond. Let us pick up our pace. Raikage-sama is really furious with you. But I have managed to smooth things over for you. And if you say exactly what I tell you, you won't get into trouble. Are you really Samui? The fact that Naruto also took away the Hachibi from B has made the Raikage really unstable. B is no longer the same without his Biju, he has even stopped rapping. This of course has brought great pain to I, and he is blaming Naruto for B's sadness. Not to mention that he has lost his weapons. Yugito, you know very well that I will never see you in the same light as B. And lately he has become suspicious of everyone. Naruto saved you from Akatsuki, only to come back later to take your Biju. To make things worse, you also went to see him, despite knowing how I feels about him. Samui paused for a moment before continuing. You are no longer important as you were when you were a Jinchuriki. Actions such as this won't be overlooked. I know, and I know very well that the eye will no longer look at me in the same way after this. Yugito placed her right hand on her chest, yet, it does not worry me. I know. Samui surprised Yugito by her response. But it does not change the situation. You are a Kumo shinobi and you will be punished for going against the Raikage. But don't worry, I have smoothed things for you. Why? You are my friend, and I know you would never betray Kumo. That was all Samui said, and it was enough for Yugito. December 26, Iwagakure Kuritsuchi sighed as she went through her grandfather's work. He left the village a few days ago, but he did not tell her where he was going. Despite this, she knew where he was going. She has learned to get information herself because she knew that the old man never really told her everything. He only told her when he wanted her involved. But when he was not going to involve her, he always kept her in the dark. She was quite frankly tired of being treated like a child. She was a grown woman. Her train of thoughts was interrupted when a shadow appeared before her. She was quickly put on alert as the person walked towards her calmly. You are Kuritsuchi-san, correct? I am, and who might you be? The black-haired demanded with narrowed eyes. She may not be in the Tsuchikage Tower, but her house was protected by Anbu. They should have made their move to apprehend this man seconds ago. But they were not. This meant that he may have done something to them. My name is irrelevant, the stranger responded in a smooth tone that leaked out nothing unwanted. But I am a messenger from the Imperial Kingdom. At the mention of that, the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage was right in front of the man. A kunai was firmly pressed against his neck, yet he did not do even so much as to blink. Tell me, why I should not slit your throat right now. For one, I am behind you, the man spoke from behind to confirm that he was indeed behind her. Kuritsuchi was shocked, but she quickly turned out to face him. However, he was not looking at her. He was walking towards her desk. The nerve of this man. This was her home for heaven's sake. And he dares to defile it and goes even as far as to show her his back. Unacceptable. Yet, she swallowed her pride and went back to her chair. The stranger had also taken a seat already. What do you want? I have a message from His Majesty. It was a simple response from the man. Yet it carried much more weight. What does he want from me? She could care less what he wants from her though. She had no business with the likes of him and would probably raise her chakra to call help so she could apprehend this fool. But he appeared to be prepared for anything. So she would not do anything foolish. You just have to answer a simple question. And if I refuse to answer, you are not obligated to answer the question. And I will not force you, but I advise you answer if you care for this village, another smooth reply. The way he was speaking was starting to tick off Kuritsuchi. But she held herself from jumping on him again. Is that a threat? Her eyes were narrowed even deeper. She did not take lightly to threats towards her village. She would kill anyone who dared threaten this place. Not at all, the man said, shaking his head slightly. But your Tsuchikage has arrived in Kumogakure. They plan to discuss how they are going to deal with His Majesty and Uchiha Madara. The latter has already defeated them, and he will do it again if they challenge him. But the difference is that this time, he will kill them. Kuratsugi snorted. Like that would ever happen. Gramps would never be defeated easily again. He may be old, but he is not weak. How naive. Perhaps His Majesty was right about you. You are certainly a child, no wonder Onoki never lets you in on serious matters. What? Care to repeat that again? Kuratsuchi's tone was dangerously low. She was certainly not pleased with being called a child and naive. She was a grown-up woman. When were people going to start realizing this? I am just a messenger, yet I was able to infiltrate this village and enter your house without being caught. I could have assassinated you if I wanted to. His Majesty's power is far beyond your level of imagination, and I tell you, if Kumo and Iwa succeed in mobilizing their forces to attack His Majesty, both villages will be destroyed. You are underestimating the power of the cages. Something like that cannot happen. Kuratsuchi felt confident that it couldn't happen. It was just impossible. One man cannot destroy two great villages on his own. I am not underestimating anything. But I know this, you will all come to know His Majesty's power, and after that, you will be faced with a choice. But before that, you must answer this question. Between the love for your village and your hatred towards His Majesty, which would you pick? Kuratsuchi bit her lip. It wasn't an easy question to answer. It may look so, but it wasn't so easy. She understood that the fact that this man came here, there was something very bad that would happen if she chose to pursue her hatred. The good answer would obviously be her love for this village. But this is a good reaction. You didn't jump to respond without weighing the meaning behind all these. Perhaps you may not be a child. But what will you do when you are faced with that reality? The stranger stood up. Although this is not an answer, it is good enough for me. He was gone after that. What the hell was that all about? Kuratsuchi questioned herself. After that man disappeared, she had allowed an enemy to leave without resistance. What the hell was she thinking? Her grandfather will not be pleased if he hears something like that. Later Conan sighed as she narrowed her eyes at the corner of her office. There was someone in her presence that was hiding. She cursed herself for not realizing it earlier though. It was rare for someone to dare enter her tower. She did not think that anyone from this village would do that. Her villagers had great respect of her, even though their god had disappeared. She figured that it must be someone from outside the village. Recently, spies have gotten braver in infiltrating the village and it was threatening the security of the village. But she was doing well to put them down. She was not going to allow anyone to threaten her village. Not while she waits for his return. His dream was for a better world, and he left without bringing that world. It was not fair to him. Come out, I know you are there, Conan finally stated looking at the shadow in her office. She was more than ready to deal with anyone who threatened her. And this was also the case. I expected nothing less from Conan-sama, the man who had appeared before Kuratsuchi spoke, as he appeared before the leader of Omegakure. Conan got a good look at him. He was wearing a long-sleeved black shirt and dark black pants. He also wore black gloves and black shinobi boots. Conan could see that he was of a good build. He had short spiky black hair, small black eyes, and was fair-skinned. She did notice that he called her Conan-sama, even though he was not from her village. You are not from here, why do you call me like that and in a friendly manner? I am a messenger for the Imperial Kingdom. I address you in such a manner because you are a valued ally to the kingdom and you hold a higher position than I am. I am just a messenger, you are a leader of this great village, the man responded calmly. What is your name? My name is irrelevant, but if you insist I will tell. For now, I was sent by His Majesty. He wishes to see you, the messenger stated, smoothly. His Majesty wishes to speak with me. Conan smiled. It was about damn time. She has been bored and a little lonely these days. Has His Majesty considered my wish? Yes. His Majesty will make your wish come true. Conan nodded. Being curious, she questioned. I thought that if he wanted to speak with me he would come himself. The messenger walked over to Conan and placed his hand on her right shoulder before responding. His Majesty never leaves his palace unless the situation calls for it. Now that we are available, His Majesty never does any trivial matters. The man stated calmly. Shall we? Before Conan could even respond, they disappeared. December 26. Konoha. The Konoha 11 was all grouped at Training 8 discussing the recent events and the events that will surely occur in the near future. The main subject was Uchiha Naruto though. They thought that Uchiha Madara would be dealt by the adults and they would deal with Naruto as he attended the academy with them. He was their peer. Things are getting heated up, really bad. I thought that once we get into the new year things would have settled down a bit, Kiba said, sighing. While he had no problems with testing his limits, he really wanted to get some peace. Inside the village it was peaceful, but outside, it was dangerous. It was common events that had been occurring recently. Konoha shinobi have been killed by shinobi claiming to be either from Sunagakure or the Imperial Kingdom. But they knew well enough that it was not shinobi from those places. Sunagakure would never do anything like that, and such tactics were really below Naruto. Iwagakure and Kumo were the ones being suspected of the deeds, but apparently it wasn't them after it was later discovered who was truly behind such tactics. Both villages were now working with Konoha. They would certainly not do anything to jeopardize that relationship. It was later discovered that the smaller villages were taking part in the big leagues. But Konoha has yet to punish any of those villages. But things would not be like that forever. Things are certainly tough. My dad doesn't even want me to leave the village, Ino groaned slightly. He thinks that if the attempts to get the great villages to turn on each other don't stop, it may most likely lead to a war. Shikamaru nodded. He is right. Even though we know Sunagakure is not behind it, it can still lead to war. It is mostly likely that the great villages will wage war against the smaller villages. That is just messed up. I don't really want to get involved in a war, Sakura stated, looking a bit shaken by the thought of war. It is unlikely that anything will happen, Sasuke stated, getting the attention of his peers. Haven't you heard that there are some guys taking care of the trouble? I thought it was just a rumor, Neji said. But it was reported that shinobi reportedly from the Imperial Kingdom, apprehended some who were causing trouble around their borders. It is most likely that Naruto will not allow anyone to ruin the image of his country. On other news events, Ino said coming up with what she heard from her father. My father told me that there is a large prison being built around one of the island around the mist. I have also heard that the prison being built by Naruto-san's people. Shino added his own input. In any case, we have to discuss how we are going to deal with the Naruto issue. With how things have now become over the past weeks, we know that Naruto will not return to this village. Especially now that he is being called a traitor, Shikamaru said, trying to bring the conversation back to the main point. It will be hard. We know what he went through in his childhood. But we have not heard if he is being called because he is seeking revenge. But it is decided if he comes after our home, we will have to stop him, Neji stated in a firm tone that left no arguments. Since that ass was our friend, we will have to deal with him ourselves if comes here for trouble, Kiba stated raising his fist. And I have a score to settle with him. Sasuke snorted. You are an idiot, he said, earning a glare from Kiba. If you think you can defeat Naruto, then you are much more of an idiot, arrogant fool than I had thought. His clear disgust was not missed by anyone. That was uncalled for, Sasuke, Sakura berated, but Sasuke merely shrugged and walked away from the group. He does have a point, Shikamaru stated so that they didn't start cursing Sasuke for being brutally honest. It was not that he cared for the Uchiha, or anything. He was just being realistic. Are you going to side with him? Kiba asked, glaring down at Shikamaru. No, but he has a point. Do you really think that you can defeat Naruto, Kiba? Need I remind you that not even Sasuke could do that? With Sasuke, idiots, Sasuke muttered as he threw himself on his bed. They were idiots for thinking they could take on Naruto. He was confused. Was Naruto really the enemy? Was Konoha itself the real enemy? If more than anything, this village was truly evil. But Naruto has not done anything to help himself. Nevertheless, he has not promised to destroy this village or even threaten it, so why was he called a traitor? If he was planning on revenge, then he would understand. Konoha abused him and then spat him out. But Naruto said no revenge. At the moment, Naruto seemed to be minding his own business. After collecting the bijouas, he disappeared from the face of the earth. Even those in his capital don't see him. What was he really planning then? Sasuke felt himself being pulled into another dimension. Never minding his surrounding as he felt no threat coming. Who are you? He asked the figure before him. I am Hagoromo. Your generation knows me as the Sage of Six Paths, the legendary founder of Shinobi responded, looking straight at the Uchiha. Never the one to question trivial matters, Sasuke never questioned where they were. What do you want with me? I have come to talk to you about Naruto. The sage responded calmly. He spoke again. You must be wondering what he is planning, but I won't get to that. Nevertheless, with what has done and what he is planning to do won't be good. I can also assure you that Naruto will end up destroying Konoha. Why are you telling me all these? Although I do not know what precisely it is that he plans. I know for certain that he plans to become god of this world. To do that, he wants to become immortal and have powers that will leave him without a rival. Tell me, if someone like Naruto possesses power that no one rivals, what will he do to this world? He is easily bored, and for his own amusement, he can start a war. Becoming god was just ridiculous. Even if he was not sure if Naruto was the enemy or not, but he knew that the blonde was not someone who should be the strongest. Naruto liked things going his way, and if not, he would ensure that they are, no matter what. The blonde was already dangerous as he was. And possibly his death could lead to some peace. You wish for me to stop him. I don't know if I can do that. Naruto is stronger than me and I am not sure if he is even the enemy. Nevertheless, the current situation was made by him and he doesn't seem to be doing anything to make it better, that I can't accept. Good answer, Hagoromo stated. Naruto is not unbeatable at the moment. He is vulnerable. This could also explain why he locks himself in his palace. If you want to know what he plans, you will have to defeat him now. Depending on the answer, you can allow him to live or kill him. But he was certain that if Naruto loses, Madara would kill him. If Naruto is alive, the infamous Uchiha cannot make his plans come true. He was indeed taking a great risk in all this. If things went wrong, Sasuke could also end up being killed and Madara would initiate his plan without anyone to stop him. However, he was betting on Naruto to lose, and then he would break a few rules to ensure that he deals with Madara. Without those two gone, the world would be free. It didn't matter if he was to be condemned for his actions. He could not face Naruto in an open battle, even if he broke a few rules. This is why his plan depended on Madara to finish what he started. The major problem to arise would be if Naruto wins. If the blonde does win, then he wouldn't be able to use Sasuke. Unaware of Hagoromo's thoughts, Sasuke smiled. That sounds fair.